Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our press conference this morning highlighting Canada's National Human Trafficking Awareness Day in Canada, which is February 22nd. Today is not February 22nd, but seeing as it doesn't land on a sitting week, we're doing this today. Human trafficking is profitable, brutal, and growing in Canada. Ending human trafficking must be a priority for all of us. That's why the co-chairs of the all-party parliamentary group to end modern-day slavery and human trafficking are raising these issues in Parliament this week in particular. As one of those co-chairs, I want to express how grateful we are to have NGOs across the country that bring forward the voices of survivors to work to end human trafficking across Canada. Our efforts and successes are driven by them. So it's my honor to introduce Kelly Tallon Franklin, the founder and chief executive director of Courage for Freedom, an organization that raises awareness and fights human trafficking across the country. They provide frontline support and support survivors across the country. Kelly is also a survivor advocate, best-selling author, award-winning speaker, and a chairperson for the Business and Professional Women's of Canada. Kelly, thank you for your voice on this, your relentless work, and your inspiration for all of us who work in this field. Kelly, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Arnold. We are happy to be here today with a small representation of the delegates and allies in the fight in anti-human trafficking and sexual exploitation in Canada. Being here today in Ottawa, we want to acknowledge that we represent persons from across Canada, and so we acknowledge the land and territories that we are seated on today as First Persons, Indigenous, and Métis. Also to acknowledge the work of the missing, murdered Indigenous women and girl efforts and the demands and how they intersect with this most egregious topic. I'm going to allow my delegates that are here today to introduce themselves and the organizations that they are here, carrying the voices and the concerns, and then I'm going to wrap up with some commentary both as a human trafficking survivor and as somebody who's actually had the humble privilege to work and support over 500 minor age women and girls since 2013 in their energy and effort to exit safely, successfully, with dignity and long-term support and care. So I'm going to ask my colleague this morning, Marianne, to introduce herself and bring her statement from her organization as their representative today.
Thank you. I'm here representing the National Council of Women of Canada. I'm their resolutions chair and incoming president. The National Council of Women of Canada is concerned over the lack of government addressing the needs of children who are concerned that children are at risk of not only being trafficked and exploited in many ways, but that includes rape. The need to prevent that at risk is very important to our organization. We've been around for 125 years. We've done resolutions on many, many different issues, but this is one that we've been working on for more than 20 years. So the first resolutions we did on trafficking were back in 2006. And we've had a number of delegations and meetings with people on this. It's a very large issue, and we think it's very important that the government takes action right now, right across the nation, in every province and territory, to ensure that everyone is dealing with this issue and that children are being protected in this country.
Thank you, Marianne. I call on Margaret to introduce herself and offer her statement this morning.
Thank you. My name is Margaret Byl. I'm the president of the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada. And WI Canada is known as the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada, FWIC, and is the national organization that provides a united voice for all women's institutes across Canada while advocating for national directives in health, education, food, safety, environmental preservation, and community support. The Women's Institute's movement grew from humble rural origins, and this year we're celebrating 126 years in Canada. So from coast to coast to coast, the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada, WI Canada, and the provincial units of the Women's Institutes have great concerns for the issue of human trafficking and missing women and children throughout the nation, many of which are coming from our rural communities. While the National Strategy to Combat Human Trafficking recognizes the sexual exploitation of our vulnerable communities, missing Indigenous women and children, 2S LGBTQIA+ persons, and migrant workers, it continues to be a real problem in Canada. We are asking that the federal government ensure that rural women and children have access to technology, education, transportation, medical, and mental health support. With the average age of recruitment into sex trafficking being 13 years old, how do we help spread the word on the issue of human trafficking in Canada? And we would encourage the federal government to coordinate programs across Canada with an emphasis on social media and anti-human trafficking. Many WI branches have had programs, including Courage for Freedom's Kelly Tallon Franklin, to learn about how human trafficking and sexual exploitation happens. On International Women's Day, March 8th, FWIC WI Canada will be hosting a complimentary program with author and guest speaker Lindsay Seeley on Growing Strong Girls, learning how we can empower women and youth today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as a Business and Professional Women Vice President for Canada, we are positioned to be in attendance at the United Nations Women's Gathering, the CSW, because one of the global concerns is about technology access and safety and prevention against trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking, to those in rural communities. So now I'd like to ask Mishuda to introduce herself, her organization, and give her brief statement.
Good morning. My name is Mishuda Sayed, and I'm with the Canadian Council of Muslim Women, and I'm the interim lead. So CCMW is concerned that an alarming number of girls, women, men, and even boys are falling prey to trafficking due to the financial hardships, social isolation, and peer pressure, among other reasons. Malls, schools, universities are common places for recruiting these victims. This is a Canadian problem. With the influx of refugees from places such as Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, and now the current situation in Turkey, reports indicate that a number of victims among racialized and immigrant and refugee communities is arising. Our project with CCMW and Courage for Freedom is in response to these new trends of targeting these new communities due to their lack of language, and they use the technique which is to lure, to groom, to coerce. Working for a women's organization, you see cases where women have been in situations that make them vulnerable to be exploited. Now, with our new government's reviewed focus on diversity of inclusion comes the responsibility for safety and protection within Canadian borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mishuda. I'd like to call on my colleague, Gareth, to introduce himself, his organization, and his passionate drive to eradicate human trafficking in Canada.
Thanks, Kelly. Good morning. My name is Gareth Williams. I am the Vice President of the Probation Officers Association of Ontario, POAO. So the Probation Officers Association of Ontario is eager to continue our current allyship to advocate and look for ongoing solutions to anti-human trafficking and sexual exploitation. There is a growing concern for the increasing amount of trafficking and sexually exploitive cases being supervised by officers in probation offices. POAO looks to support frontline youth probation officers and adult probation and parole officers and all colleagues in corrections in accessing current information to recognize the signs of victimization as well as the trends and behaviors of perpetrators in this egregious crime. Particularly, we are concerned with the harms associated with the coerced secondary and tertiary crimes. Through the work with Courage for Freedom, there are ongoing challenges in helping to support victims branch away from these financial crimes. These harms are perpetuating victims' entrenchment in the subculture and provide further challenges for victims to exit the justice system. This calls attention to the significant costs to coerced crimes. We need intersection with the financial prong of our government to address all the financial costs of coerced crimes experienced by all from coast to coast to coast. We look forward in our continuing partnership with Courage for Freedom to eradicate the buying and selling of girls and boys, children in Canada. Thanks.
Thank you, Gareth, and thank you, panel. I'm now going to speak both as a human trafficking survivor that's historic, but I will be amplifying the voices of those survivors that are willing to provide solutions, information, and to even lead in sectors from government to industries. First, I want to tell you that we're very happy to be here as a delegation in Ottawa. There is 19 of us in total, even though there's only 5 of us in this press conference. We will be heading to question period and have a meeting with the APPG group under Arnold's co-founding and co-chairing with his co-chairs and members. We first want to thank the APPG for their current and ongoing work, specifically on Bill 211, fighting against forced labor and child labor in the supply chain. You can visit the APPG site and read about the sponsors, the focus of the bill, and the status. As well, Bill S-224, which is an act to amend the criminal code under the Palermo Protocol definition. Excuse me. This is also something that our public needs to follow and engage in. There is also a third bill currently. We ask that you, the public, and those that are in journalism continue to report and push forward the information to the public to make good decisions. One of the things that's very important to me is that as we're meeting with those today in Ottawa to discuss things in Canada to work on eradicating human trafficking, we're eager to hear and learn and to share together. When we're done today, we will go back to our organizations in geographic regions across Canada to network our allies and stakeholders to continue under a human rights framework and intersectional service to participate with an apolitical will to plan and actuate all those things that need to happen in our shared humanity as Canadians. We are looking for research that drives policies, laws, legislation, and projects that require concurrent alignment across federal departments to realize common goals in safety and protection that will influence our culture, health, security, and justice, that we would be prosperous and happy people in Canada. In February of 2021, our federal government realized the importance of human trafficking survivor participation and input, and that today, that is actually demanding their ongoing attention and their commitment to leadership. There is space for key roles and responsibilities to execute the national strategy under the 4 developed pillars of prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. We think it is important that there is an ongoing commitment to this and a succession. We call to attention that there's need for further actions in areas that are supported by upcoming impact evaluations and multiple discussions across all sectors. As the lead organization, we have spearheaded this effort in collaboration, and we stand in proxy for those that have suffered the effects of this crime and will continue to deal with their complex traumas and other issues that accompany what has to happen in the care and support of those that have been victimized and criminalized under our watch. From the Anishinaabe youth workers that I've sat with in Manitoulin, the largest unceded territory in Canada, to Muslim women's organizations over concerns about parents' inability to process the legal system, understand it, and to navigate it to protect their families. To newcomers, to their mothers and fathers that may not speak the language and need the very children that have been trafficked explain to their families what's happened to them. And to the daughters and young people that are helping each other in foster care because our system is failing to keep them safe in that regard. To those struggling in addiction and in desperate need of support in mental health and physical health care as it intersects with this issue, we have seen a shift in perpetrator recruiting, grooming, luring, and coercive controls. COVID isolation created the perfect storm for a buyer's market, and Canada was open for business. While the nation was helpless to address the shifts and challenges with the COVID attention, there's a new means of this crime against humanity and a push and even more egregious reports of resulting abuse. Our history of survivor leadership and proven capacity to bridge new alliances through Courage for Freedom is because we do not sit at a table. We sit as a nation, we link arms, and there's room for all to do the work. Who gets the credit? The survivors. They are the ones that rescue themselves. They are the ones that have the information that this government, every NGO, allied stakeholder, and organizational representative, including here at this table, need to hear, not only hear and use for political or influencer currency, but allow them the opportunity to lead at the highest positions in organizations as equipped, educated, intelligent, and relevant. Sorry, I'm emotional. The work in human rights and justice has started with the request of a 16-year-old survivor and a conversation calling the 401 highway in Ontario a corridor in 2019. It's there that Courage for Freedom made history with 180 different organizational allies. That stretch is now an encompassing stretch known as a corridor across Canada. It pipelines vulnerable victims of sex and labor trafficking, specifically a higher demographic of women and girls, as sexual commodities who are bought and sold. Project En Route, as it was known, made history with screen impressions and calls to active engagement that resulted in a very robust and funded Ontario strategy that we are hopeful our federal colleagues would ensure would become available and active in every province. We're grateful for the national strategy, and we acknowledge our understanding that it is the responsibility laid on public safety to lead and to implement that in partnership with all Canadians, strengthening our collective responses. Support areas of empowerment are what will result. This is all overarched by the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crimes, and we have done well to also encompass labor, cyber, and supply chain issues. We are absolutely in line with the ratified UN protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, as reported and undertaken in 2002. We acknowledge the targeted campaigns and efforts in the past of the RCMP and governmental agencies, but we request of our government and all those participating in empowerment and working across lines and together to coordinate current, up-to-date, and relevant information for public safety and security that does not victimize our trafficked victims and survivors. We acknowledge the progress of criminal code amendments and the launch of the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking in May of 2019, and also the intersectional work on all platforms with EU, ID, IHR, OSCE, ISTAC, and all those in cooperation between Canada, Mexico, and the United States to work in safety and security and purpose of person. We are hopeful Canada will lead in this regard. In February, our government realized the importance of this. They struck out in their key role, and they put demands on ongoing attention. We would like to ask them for their ongoing attention and commitment. We need their leadership. Their key role and responsibility to execute this strategy under their 4 pillars is important. So today we call attention to the further needs. And I'd like to be able to talk about the action areas that our 4 pillars nationally are supporting. We're almost coming to the end of our strategy, and February 22nd, we would like a report card. We do that not as a criticism as Canadians, but to support the governmental will that is apolitical, that is going to work to successfully see those goals come to fruition, and then to continue with succession planning and perpetuity to ensure that that national strategy stands and is evaluated every 5 years. In 2019 to 2022, as reported by Julia Drydeck from the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking, we have just yesterday had a discussion about an impact evaluation that is soon to be released. This, along with third-party evaluations and studies across the country, are being reported from everyone from boots on the ground to researchers to the policies and lawmakers working together. Their hotline received 9,008 signals, calls, chats, emails, web forms that connected 5,894 persons and clearly identified 1,498 human trafficking cases. A reminder to those watching that one is too many. It is the tip of the iceberg, as awareness still remains low and unconnected to the prevention activities that a community should be executing. We're here representative of organizational membership and allies that aren't here in person, but in purpose and spirit. Our agriculture, industries, and labor, immigration, First Persons, transportation, wage and gender equity, overseeing women and children, justice, financial, medical, and mental health, and again, justice overseers need to hear us today. Our response requires their intersectionality. As an act of solidarity to honor survivors of trafficking and their families, we reflect and pause today and ask you to do so on February 22nd. I was interviewed by CBC the day that this became a National Awareness Day, and I cried and celebrated to thank our Government of Canada for acknowledging the plight and ongoing needs of survivors and their families. We want to affirm with our government and our colleagues we are on the right track, and we need to continue on a track with greater means and traction, and ask for commitments calling for immediate focus of our government and action on equitable access to services across the country to cover the major gaps, particularly in rural areas, noting that 42% of the referral partners in Ontario came from rural communities. We ask for impunity in coerced crimes that victim survivors are forced to navigate away from, and a systemic review to adjust the criminal justice system of court participation, language, and witness supports to reach the pillar goals already before us as Canadians of conviction. We ask for a national plan in land, air, waterway, and government building information being publicly posted and standard, not segregated province to province. We are one nation. And we ask that they mirror the effects and success of the U.S. Senate to give the oversight nationally to their state projects. We could learn. We ask that our government would give oversight to development and execution of provincial strategies to ensure everyone is included and active politically in service and community literate and knowledgeable to ensure perpetuity and purpose of care, regardless of where you are or who you are in Canada. We ask for consistent policing of buyers under the current law and a review of the system gaps in witness support, bail protection, witness statements, disclosures, plea deals that prevent sex crimes registrations. That includes acknowledging and supporting that mental health supports for sexually impulsive behavior that leads to criminal activity needs to be at the forefront of our agenda, especially to support our families, our male allies and colleagues, and those from every orientation. We ask for a leveling of technology, education, transportation, and basic needs in all rural communities in Canada. And we demand survivor leadership consultation, striking a table acknowledged by historic and current trusted and vetted survivors as the chosen advocates and allies that will do the work. They will do it without regard for themselves, putting the needs of victim survivors at the forefront. Provinces cannot ensure every victim survivor has the services they need when they need them, as human trafficking crosses all municipal, provincial, territorial borders. So again, we ask our federal representatives to work apolitically, showing the leadership that they have committed to in ensuring that every person in Canada that is subject to this human rights abuse has access to the supports they need to exit, heal, repair, and thrive with dignity in resilient, safe, prosperous communities known as Canada. February 22nd, I will be joining my colleagues at the APPG, along with my delegates and those across Canada, to say, what is the report card on the status of our national human trafficking awareness efforts? We'd like to hear. We'd like concrete timelines on the execution of goals and plans. And in the meantime, Project Interclusion, that has gone across Canada and is now available for safety and informational demands in over 10 languages, can be accessed by the public. We continue with Project Maple Leaf, and we ask you to support your local organizations that are expert and aligned with survivor leadership and oversight. I want to thank the panel, and I want to thank MP Viersen for his tireless energy with his colleagues and his co-chairs at the APPG. I want to thank every single member of Parliament, because Canada cares. We can not only lead in Canada in this, but we can lead globally. Thank you and good morning.
Well, thank you, Kelly. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That's where I jump in. Usually I would moderate the question and answer period of the session, but I know a bunch of my colleagues are at the caucus inns right now. So if that's okay, I just have a few questions for you. My name is Catherine Levesque. I work for the National Post, and I was just wondering. So you're meeting with the APPG's, the all-party parliamentary group to end modern slavery. I was just wondering if you had asked to meet with federal ministers, and if so, what was their response?
So knowing that we were coming to Ottawa with limited time and trying to make travel plans that everybody is covering on their own, we have reached out to every member of Parliament, every minister, every associate minister, every shadow cabinet minister, every political party. We did have an informational session set up with Wage and through the chair of the Status of Women's Committee, who unfortunately has a personal matter of attendance. So we have already set up ongoing meetings through ministers' offices that will continue this discussion virtually. This is everyone at the table, and we work across all lines. Everybody was notified that we were coming, and they were given available times if they'd like to intersect with us going long into the evening tonight.
Fair enough. Are you meeting with any ministers virtually that you can tell us about, or not?
I would reserve that comment until after we see the the APPG has a very extensive member and associate member list, and I've heard that our room might be too small. So there is opportunity, and we will encourage those in attendance to share with their colleagues, and we will have a report of our day and make it available to all ministers and their offices, their policy analysts and advisors, everyone. Everyone will have all our information and access to us for ongoing dialogue and engagement to work together.
Thank you. And in your remarks, you spoke about a perfect storm during COVID for human trafficking. I was just wondering if you could maybe explain a bit more
Sure.
in detail what that means, and has it gotten worse since the restrictions lifted?
Yes, it has. The struggles through isolation, struggles with mental health, with access, there was a lot of things that were injurious to us as a society in our mental health and our capacity to navigate COVID, from the youngest to the oldest. And I can tell you the youngest victim of human trafficking that I've worked with has been 4. So this affected education. This affected community. This affected sports. And with that isolation also came a renewed energy into the virtual world, where especially young persons, and we know that 72% of all human trafficking is identified as under age 24, with a larger demographic 18 and under. And those that didn't have the capacity to be able to find alternatives in their sports or clubs or associations or in-person meetings were turning to the internet, which we don't need to vilify, because it's actually criminals that are using those areas and social media to recruit, lure, and groom. So it meant that they had greater access, more hours on the internet, on their social media. And so the criminals monetized on those situations. And so they were very active. The buying and selling did not stop. In fact, it was accelerated because there were persons that were struggling with sexually impulsive behavior that were actually using purchasing of people as part of their strategy to deal with the stress of COVID. We know that in 2019, the statistics showed a 43% increase in human trafficking even before the numbers hit us in COVID. So we're looking at all those things, and we're coming out of COVID, and we need to reclaim some of those areas of safety and protection. Particular attention going to the UN as Canada. I'm there representing Business and Professional Women Canada. We're talking about technology and access rurally. But I think we need to continue as Canadians to have the concurrent conversation to equally invest not only in the technology and the access, but the safety, protection, and prevention under our guises of UN protocols and the rules of CEDAW. That we not only look after individual rights, but we look after community rights and protection.
Thank you very much for your comments and your presence today. I do see there are no questions at the moment, but I'm sure our colleagues can listen to this press conference afterwards. So thank you very much for being here today. And this
Thank
ends
you
the
as
press
well for
conference.
attending.
Thank you.